So, hello everyone. This is Darswell Rogers, and welcome to a special recorded or pre-recorded edition of my program. I'm so pleased to have joining me a longtime friend of mine, fraternity brother, Mr. Michael Rhim. He's a principal with PRM Consulting in Washington, D.C., and his focus and expertise is in human resource retirement management, and really focused on retirement. And I just thought that it's always a good time to talk about how we prepare for the future and how we go about investing. So I thought I'd have Mike on. So hello, Mike, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Darswell. Good morning to you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Why don't you give folks a little bit of background on yourself and your career, and then we'll kind of jump into some of the specifics as it relates to investing and preparing for retirement.
Sure. I'll start with I don't want to go too far back. I'll start with my college days, and I actually majored in insurance, and it was a new major at the time, and wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with that major. But one of the reasons I got in, to be truthfully honest, is that they were providing scholarships. So I needed a scholarship, and I qualified. So I ended up switching my major over to insurance. But what it did is it opened up the door for me to understand the different job opportunities in the insurance industry. And so when I graduated from Howard, I actually had 5 job offers because of my insurance background. And so I ended up taking a job here in Washington, D.C., working for a consulting firm called the Wyatt Company. And it opened my eyes to an area that I did not know exist. Wyatt Company was a pension actuarial consulting firm. And I was a actuarial assistant at the time, and saw how consultants worked and what they did and how they operated. And so after that, I worked there for a couple of years, went over to a local power company, Pepco, and then was recruited to a firm out of New York called TIAA-CREF. Never heard of them, but they were a retirement plan that focused on retirement plans for higher education. And so I ended up taking a job with them, worked for TIAA-CREF for over 20 years. And back in 2008, I was at the pinnacle of my career to decide whether I was going to stay another 10 or 20 years and move to a different area. And so I was actually, I won't say recruited, but talked into evaluating a consulting firm, a small firm here in Washington, which was back to my roots of starting back with the Wyatt Company. But I was recruited there to run the retirement practice. So I'm a principal of PRM. I run the retirement practice of the firm. I've been here now for 14 years and counting.
14 years of counting. And so your focus is still, so where did, in terms of retirement, where are you focusing your activities in terms of your customers?
Right. So we work strictly with employers. And so I'm working with employers. What we do is we provide services in the area, for example, of evaluating their record keepers. So whether an employer has Prudential or Fidelity or Vanguard or Voya, you name it, TIA as their record keeper, we are hired to evaluate their services, their fees, and do an assessment we call it a due diligence assessment, to determine whether or not these firms are providing the best services at the best rates for the employees. For private firms, they should be doing this every 3 to 5 years anyway, because all private firms are covered under something called ERISA. And so under ERISA, as part of their fiduciary responsibility, they should be evaluating their vendors all the time. Not everybody knows this. And there have been plenty of lawsuits recently for firms that had not been doing that. And so for us, it's especially during the pandemic, when institutions had a time to sit back and say, okay, what do we need to do that we haven't been doing? So we became very busy during that time, but that's just one of the things that we do. In addition, most plans will have investment advisors. And so we are hired to help pretty much do the same thing, either help an organization hire an investment advisor or help an organization evaluate their current investment advisor. The investment advisor in a retirement plan, and we're speaking of a 401k plan or 403b plan, 401ks typically for for-profit organizations. 403B focuses on nonprofit organizations. And also we look at 457s, which can be for private or government plans. Investment advisors are utilized to evaluate the investment menu of the plans. So we are evaluating and or hiring advisors for some of our larger clients. For some of our smaller clients, they hire PRM, they hire us as their investment consultant. So we'll work with a plan of under 20, 25 people, and we'll be their investment consultant, providing the same process, but at a cost that's much more effective. And so we provide services in that area, as well as the other things that we'll do with the company is we'll help them with their plan design, with their plan documents, with their discrimination testing. We even provide group employee education sessions for some of our smaller clients. For our larger clients, we don't have the capacity to do that. We'll provide employee education services for our clients, which basically means for their employees. So that's kind of a general summary. We get a little bit more detailed in some of the things we do, but those are the main services that we provide.
So if you're a small employer, and a good number of the people that listen to this show are entrepreneurs, what is that question of putting in a group plan for your employees?
Right.
Is a question. And it's kind of, let's just go through the basics. This may be smaller than you would typically do, but offer up some advice or some insight for a small business that's deciding, so I'm an entrepreneur. I obviously need retirement for myself. I've got a small group of employees. Should I be considering putting in a plan? Is there a perception that this is going to be too expensive? Just kind of walk basically through how a person who's kind of de novo, what should I be doing? And then we can kind of tear our way up in terms of conversation.
Yeah, sure. So, and we get that question a lot. Small employers have the decision process of evaluating what type of plan they want and what type of for their employees that they have. If you have 2 or 3 employees, the question becomes, gee, do I want to go through the process of having a 401k plan, which does require cost and ongoing monitoring? So if you start a 401k plan for 2 or 3 people, or 4 people, or less than 10, let's say, you're held to the same standard as large plans in terms of what's expected of you. So it becomes a little bit cumbersome when you're a small employer and you're still trying to figure out how to make payroll and how to make sure to keep the doors open. Oh, and by the way, offer medical benefits as well as retirement. So what we see a lot of times is a small employer will do something like a simple IRA plan or a SEP plan, for example. And they may look at those type of plans and say, okay, we're offering this to our employees. There are certain provisions that they may have to go through in doing that, but it's less cost prohibitive to them. And also, they don't have to go through the same process as a 401k. 401k, you have to file this annual Form 5500, for example, every year. You have to have testing done on the plan every year. If you go with the simple plan, which can be, you can get those plans through any companies, I shouldn't say any, but most record keepers have small employer plans. SEP is self-employee plan. You can do that for small plans, and those typically benefit the employer. However, if you're looking to grow your organization, if you're looking to, if your clientele is where you're competing in an area where your competitors have a 401k plan and it's very robust and have all kind of bells and whistles that may be more attractive to employees, you have to, as an employer, have to decide, well, gee, if my competitors are doing this and I'm trying to get the best people I can, do I need to have a 401k, or is this SEP thing good enough for my staff? That's an evaluation that an owner has to make, and they have to weigh that cost against the people that they're trying to attract.
What I have found with small employers is that frequently the employees don't understand the benefit and the value of starting retirement. And they frequently are operating with the presumption that they can't afford retirement because they're perceiving themselves as being paycheck to paycheck and the idea of saving is a bit of a, in their minds, is a bit of a challenge and a struggle. And so getting employees to choose to participate, I found to be a problem. Do you have any thoughts or insights just around that one question?
Yes, we work with all types of organizations, private, public, for-profit, nonprofit. So we do some work, for example, in the public entity. And one client who will be nameless right now is a large city we're working with. And their participation rate was very low for employees to participate in the plan. This is a city that has 30,000 employees. And I think 2,000 of them were putting money in on their own for saving in the retirement plan. And so they asked us to kind of figure out what they can do working with their record keeper. So we conducted focus groups of people not in the plan. And so we would ask them, why are you not participating? This, it helps you from a tax standpoint, it helps you for putting money away, it helps you down the line. And what was interesting is so the responses were all over the place. One was simply procrastination. People just procrastinate. It's like, I haven't just gotten around to it. Two, a lot of people really don't understand retirement and was really afraid to sit down and ask questions. They didn't understand. It was intimidating to them to say, well, gee, I have to pick a place where to put the money. I don't understand how this thing works. Or I don't know how much money to even put out of my paycheck. How does this help me? So they really needed more individualized education. And by the way, these are the kind of things that we pulled out and helped the record keeper focus on making some changes. So what people will tend to do is, and then you'll have the other end where we call it paralysis through analysis, where they'll have an investment menu of 30 different options to choose from. And they're like, I have no clue which ones I should be putting my money in because this is too much. So in an issue like that, for example, we're always working with institutions to say you should have what's called target date or life cycle funds, which makes it much easier for people to pick diverse lineups. And the last point I'll say on this too is right now with the volatility in the markets, it's really even more intimidating to employees saying, oh, gee, see, I get in this plan and it's losing money. Inflation has set in and it's affecting my account. And so some people are like, this is exactly why I don't want to be in the plan. So we're constantly talking to organizations and employees sometimes through group education meetings about the long-term nature and showing them data that shows that even when times like this occurs, history has always shown that the markets will eventually come back up and you'll be in an even better position long-term. So yeah, all of those issues, procrastination, not understanding, needing more education, all of those are issues that are important to employees to help them focus on retirement planning.
You said a mouthful there, and I think the key two thoughts that crossed my mind listening to you was first and foremost fear. And that fear was fear that I'm going to lose my money. It was fear that I'm going to ask questions and somebody's going to think I don't know what I'm talking about. And then the other one is, how do I get, good information so that I can make a good decision? I might be willing, but is the information there? So can we walk through kind of a basic, hey, I'm thinking about investing for my retirement. What are the questions that I should be asking myself? And where would I go for answers? So, I mean, this obviously could be somebody who's just attempting to make these decisions on their own outside of an employer plan. Can you walk us through kind of just the basic foundational ideas of I should put money away for retirement. Why should I do it? And how should I go about it?
Right. Okay. I'll answer it from two perspectives. If you are working right now as an employee, you should first take advantage of your employer's retirement plan if you have one. So in doing that, if you don't understand it, go to your HR office, ask for information on the retirement plan. When am I eligible? What do I have to do to enroll? How can I get information to learn more about it? And typically that information would come from the record keeper. So again, if that record keeper is Fidelity or Vanguard or Voya or TIA,
And again, the names you're mentioning, Fidelity, Vanguard, those are mutual funds.
well, those are record keepers
Okay,
that have investment mutual funds at the same
okay,
name. Right.
gotcha,
So
gotcha.
Fidelity is an organization, biggest mutual fund company, but they are a record keeper and one of the biggest out there. Vanguard, again, investment funds, but they're a record keeper. Voya, they have some funds, but they're a record keeper. So the record keeper is the group that's hired to run the retirement plan. So if you work for an employer, your first question is, do we have a plan? And if we do, where can I get information from that plan, which would be the Human Resource Department. And the Human Resource Department would have information on how you enroll and what it takes to enroll. If you're not in a plan, if you're an individual and you're just kind of working on your own, then you should look at, okay, I need to make some investments long-term. The first place you really would want to take a look at is mutual funds, our mutual funds. So you would look at mutual funds, and that takes us down a whole nother rabbit hole that I won't go too detailed into,
Yeah.
but you would look at mutual funds as investment options for you. There, if you're individual, you would really have to do a lot of homework on your own to find out, well, who has some good mutual funds? Now, in this case, again, you've got any company that's out there. I just mentioned some of the ones that record keepers, they also provide individual services. So you can be a company called The Principal or TIAA or Fidelity or Vanguard. They also have mutual funds for individuals separately. But the reason I mentioned first, if you work with an employer, is because as an employer, you can get the tax break if you put money away out of your paycheck, tax deferred. It lowers your taxable income. So for 2023, for example, an employee could tax defer, and this is a big number, up to $22,500 out of their paycheck, but they don't have to pay taxes on upfront. So
what you're saying is that if they put $22,500 in a retirement plan, it would be, you could put that much in an employer retirement plan, and it would reduce your taxable income dollar for dollar for the amount that you put in.
Exactly. So that's one of the major advantages in taking advantage of your employer plan. You could also, some employers have again, not get too detailed. If employees didn't want to do the before tax, you could also do it as an after tax basis called the Roth. But the point is, you should always take advantage of your employer's plan, especially if they have a match. We see employers will say, look, we'll match you 2 for 1. So if you put in $2,000, we'll put in 4. If you put in $3,000, we'll put in 6. So if you have a matching plan, you should always take advantage of your employer's matching plan first. And the benefit of that is your money is being tax deferred. So not only are you going to have the benefit of having your money tax deferred, lower your taxable income, you'll also get money put in by your employer. And over time, that money grows significantly. So that's kind of the starting point. But the other point that's the biggest one for people, as you mentioned, is the fear of, I don't understand how this stuff works. That's why it's critically important, if you're with your employer, to find out what the education platform is. Again, it's going to the record keeper, and they typically have an 800 number, or a lot of places will have, large institutions will have education days. And these are some of the things that we work with employers to do, by the way. We say, hey, you need to have education days. You need to work that into your plan with your employer. You make sure that it's communicated to employees. We really help employers set those kind of things up to really help their employees have the best retirement opportunity they can receive.
We're talking to Michael Rhim. He's a principal at PRM Consulting, and we're covering the topics around retirement today. So we've got just a couple of minutes before we want to take a break here, but this question around you should definitely do the retirement plan of your employer first. Make the case for why I should put aside money for retirement.
Right. So good question. And it goes even back to the focus groups, because that's one of the questions and I ran most of the focus group sessions myself. One of the questions somebody says, like, why should I do this? I'm going to work until I die. So why do I need retirement? No, I don't plan to need retirement. I'm going to invest money from my grandparents. Everybody has different situations, but at the end of the day, ultimately, what are you going to use when you decide to work, when you decide to stop working? What are you going to use as income? And you always want to give yourself options, even if you're in a situation where like, oh, you have a rich aunt or uncle and I'm going to get money from them. Having a retirement plan gives you options. And those options can be, okay, I've got this additional money that's available that I can use for retirement. I can use it for legacy of my family, etc. But one of the things we say, and this is a planning tip, one of the tips I give when I do my presentations, is what you want to look at is whatever your income is, you want to replace at least 80% of your income when you decide to retire. So if you can create something, if it's not retirement, something else that replaces 80% of your income on an annual basis when you retire, God bless you, go for it. If you can get that from selling homes or what have you, you're looking at so if your income is $100,000 a year, when you quote unquote retire, you want to be generating $80,000 a year. And that 80% includes everything that you have, whether it's mutual funds, whether it's retirement plan, it also includes Social Security. That's what you want to shoot for. Once you know you can get to about 80% of your pre-retirement income, however you can get to that number, you can then you're in good shape or more. So it really depends on what you're looking at from a long-term perspective.
Mike, that's awesome. So we're going to take a
Mr.
break
Rogers, I think you
here.
just went mute on me.
No. Can you hear me?
Oh, I hear you now, yes.
Okay. So we're going to take a quick break here and come back. We're talking to Michael Rhim. He's a principal with PRM Consulting in Washington, D.C. And we're going to pay the bills and be right back.